we both serve, or Jesus Christ of Nazareth, had long hair like wool.
Peggy, we have an audience of one. And if you don't have an audience of one, you can't relate to me. I don't care about you or any of these other people. I have an audience of one. And that's who I'm worried about, what that person thinks or what that God figure thinks of me.
For sure.
The rest of this is just noise.
Okay.
And so you have to get in that mentality in order to see through, like, who cares what some white person that has no power over me thinks?
So how did you come up with this stigma
If your whole
of
life is
this?
based off of worrying about what some random white person thinks, you're gonna live a sad life.
Nobody said we care about what somebody thinks. It all started with relatability.
Yeah.
I want to go back to something real quick. When you said the brand appeal that Michael Jordan had, there is this thing that a lot of people get misinterpreted with what made Michael Jordan Michael Jordan. It wasn't how he looked. It wasn't his shoes. The only reason why we have polarizing figures or have immortalized Michael Jordan was because of what he did on the basketball court. Not a lot of people, nobody has ever done that. So it doesn't matter if you have tattoos, it doesn't matter if you have dreadlocks, it doesn't matter nothing. The key common denominator that sets Michael Jordan apart from nobody else outside of Tom Brady is that their resume is something that will probably never be touched. And that's what makes him so sellable or scalable to the platforms.
You're making my point.
The Gatorades, the Nikes.
You're making my
They see
point.
a sellable figure that it's a small chance that an average basketball player will reach his level of success, and it's not because of his shoes are selling.
I know a guy in football who could have been Michael Jordan.
Who?
Cam Newton.
Could have.
And Peggy, could have. And Peggy, did you watch him at Auburn?
Yeah,
Did you watch him carry a
team,
mediocre
that wasn't
football
even the same team the year before.
with no pros to the national championship? I saw a man that could have been Michael Jordan. But instead, and he could have done exactly what Cam's talking about. Cam could have won 6-7 Super Bowls, 3 or 4 MVPs, and could have had the resume that just said, would have made the dreads or whatever. I don't know what the hairstyle is called, the dreads, the outfits, all of that irrelevant. This man could have went out on that football field and been Superman for 15 straight years and won 3 or 4 or 5, 6 Super Bowls and MVPs, and he could have been Michael Jordan. And if I were Cam's agent, me and Cam would have been having knockdown, drag out fights, wrestling with each other like, I'm gonna make you Michael Jordan. And Cam is sitting out there, no, I want to be 2 Chainz.
Never.
And I'm like, never.
So you saying clothes and hair?
Y'all know I hate to use that word, but I was like, man, you can be Michael Jordan. Well, we not fooling around with this rap mess.
So clothes and hair dictate your success. That's what you're saying.
No.
Not the depth of your career. Not the depth of your career, not your work ethic, not who you truly are, but you saying your representation dictates.
You took your eye off the ball and got involved with, hey, I'm gonna do it with fashion. I'm gonna do it by appealing to the culture. I'm gonna do this. All Cam had to do was win games.
What did that have to do with winning games, though? What's the correlation?
Okay, if you want to make this point, Jason, I feel that that's very hypocritical of you because you don't like fashion.
I'm not anti-fashion.
When I would see you on Speak for Yourself, you used to wear hats and you was drippy, as I would deem, right? You don't wear hats no more.
For a fat person, I was drippy.
But did it take away from your?
But listen,
they call it more wavy than drippy when you're my size. But go ahead.
From what your voice was speaking. Do you understand what I'm saying? You wore hats, you wore suits, you wore certain things that you may deem, hey, I want to look nice. I want to look like I can present myself.
Distinct.
Correct.
Okay, distinct. Perfect.
Now, let me ask you this. This is why I say it's hypocritical.
Talk to me.
Well, you talked about sports, right? What gives you the right to talk about politics? Did you? You took your, so you can say you took your eyes off the prize. So it's like when it comes to athletes and you use this visual aesthetic, trying to compare visual aesthetic to on-field or on-court success or resume success, when we think about Jalen Hurts, you would say he's polished, right?
Yep.
Well,
he came with a big chain on.
But when Jalen Hurts was at Alabama, he did not have hair.
He had locks.
Okay. Why do we look at Jalen Hurts different than we look at Lamar Jackson?
Maybe his dialect, the way he speaks.
So this is, I'm trying to give you examples that what you're saying is not true. Would you say Matthew Stafford is a relatively good quarterback?
Yeah, I would say so.
Right? Well, why do we look at Matthew Stafford any different than we look at Trevor Lawrence? It doesn't matter how I put my hair. Nobody complains about Trevor Lawrence having long hair, but the God that we both serve, or Jesus Christ of Nazareth, had long hair, like wool.
So I'm laying all of that out so you can understand that when you talk about how did we reach this point, that the Bible can be set in the motherland, and you go to black churches today and it looks like a Trump rally. I have been in black churches and I've seen stained glass windows all around. And I swear I'm looking at a Trump cabinet meeting of nothing but white people. I've gone to places and they've taken this view of, from the Sistine Chapel, this is what Jesus looks like, and blonde hair and blue eyes, and folks have run with that, and Jesus did not look like Brad Pitt. In fact, if you took the movie 12 Years a Slave, Chiwetel Ejiofor and Brad Pitt, Jesus looked more like Chiwetel Ejiofor than Brad Pitt. But the person who is in control of the narrative sets the tone. And what we have done is we have fallen victim to his story and not history. And so we are continuing to to allow white supremacy to define how it is we see not only the Bible, but how we even see ourselves. We are walking around today still operating with a white supremacy mindset, even when it comes to black people. When I had my show, a brother told me, he said, man, when you gonna get you a show? I was like, I'm on TV every day. 7 to 9 on TV 1 for 4 years. He said, no. I mean a real show. I said, a real show? I said, do you realize that when Brian Williams, before he was exaggerating stories and he got demoted, that's just fact. I said, do you realize that when Brian Williams comes to Washington, D.C. to do the NBC Nightly News, that Brian Williams sits in the exact same chair that I sit in? I said, do you know that there's a glass table just to the left on the second shelf? It's a mirror and a bristle brush. I said, Brian can't use a bristle brush. I said, brother, do you realize that the cameras in the background and the walls are the exact same? I said, because see, what you don't realize is that we contract the studio out with NBC News Channel. You don't realize that we send the signal from the fiber optic line from Washington, D.C. to our satellite location in Denver, which then goes up to the satellite uplink, which broadcasts around the country. I said, so I use the same studio, sit in the same chair, send the signal the exact same way as they do, but you don't think my show is real because it's on a black network. You think I would have a real show if it's on CNN or MSNBC. I said, you are promoting white supremacy. We walk around promoting white supremacy when we say, well, you know, it's a black business. When white folks have been late showing up, you can't show me a cable company that's arrived at your house on time to install your cable. But if a black-owned business is 30 or 45 minutes late, you will not call another black business ever again, because you will say you know how we are. I have worked with some awful white folks, and I don't sit there and go, well, you know, it's a white business. We literally, because of how we have been conditioned to think that what is black is second rate. It is less than. It is not as good. We walk around saying those things and we think it's joking. We say, oh man, this is CP time. Well, I've been to a whole bunch of stuff that white folks been real late. I ain't never heard somebody say it's WP time. And some of us might say, well, that's an innocent thing, but no, it's not, because what you don't understand is you are actually furthering white supremacy by telling another generation that we are less than. So therefore, our children are growing up believing that we are somehow secondary and not as good. And so you take the same thing as a white Jesus and put it next to how we view ourselves. And so therefore, we're simply promoting another generation of the power of white supremacy. See, the power of white supremacy is not just that white people think that they are better and more advanced than us. White supremacy also means that it has degraded us to the point that when we see ourselves, we look at one another and hate what we're looking at. Annually across the globe, $10 billion is spent every year on bleaching cream. $10 billion. A study was done that 77% of the people in Nigeria have used some form of bleaching product. Huge, it's huge in India and in Asian countries, but you're now seeing it across many African countries. Côte d'Ivoire, Ghana, and South Africa have actually limited the selling of bleaching products. They've been regulating it because one of the ingredients is known to cause cancer, but they also are doing that because they don't want their people to somehow believe that white is right or being lighter is brighter and better. That, folks, is also a byproduct of white supremacy.
What's your thoughts? Please be respectful with your comments. Also, please click the like, click the notification bell, and subscribe to this channel.
Listen, Genesis chapter 11 verse 10 explains the genealogy of Shem. Shem was a black man in Africa. If you repeat this back, Genesis 14 verse 13, Abraham steps on the scene. Being a descendant of Shem, which is a fact, means Abraham too was Abraham, born in the city of a black man called Nimrod, grandson of Ham. Ham had 4 sons. One was named Canaan. Here, let me do some explaining. Abraham, Isaac was Jacob had 12 sons. For real. And these were the children of Israel. According to Genesis chapter 10. These were the children of Israel. According to Genesis chapter 10. These were the children of Israel. According to Genesis chapter 10.